presentations. There we go. So please welcome Steve back to the stage. Thank you. We also have Lars. Please join us. Lars Brunning will be with us. We have Andrew Holmes. More rounds of applause, please. And we have Doug Kirkpatrick. Thank you. Probably in the right order, or maybe not. Thank you, sir. Thanks. All yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. And as I mentioned earlier, we are following Peter Drucker's advice to look out the window and see what's visible but not yet seen. And so this session will be on what is. We'll be spending more time tomorrow on what might be, but this is about the reality of what's actually happening. And so we have leaders who are already doing this in their lives. And I'm not going to give them an introduction and explain all the wonders of their careers and how they've made huge contributions. They will do that in passing as part of that. But I really want to have them talk about what are they doing to create the next management today, not tomorrow, but today, what's actually happening in their front. So without further ado, I'd like to start by inviting Lars to tell us what's happening in Bayer.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Good morning, and thank you very much for being here and having me and being able to spend time together on what we do currently in Bayer AG, where we are, here we go, where we are introducing a new operating model, and we call that new operating model, so the way that we work with one another, dynamic shared ownership. Now, Bayer AG, we have a very compelling mission that gets us all up in the morning out of bed. And that is health for all, hunger for none. That's what we are striving for. And we are a combination of 3 different businesses. We have agriculture, and it's all about growing the yields to feed the population of this earth. We're in pharmaceuticals, where I'm also working. And in pharmaceuticals, it's about treat the untreatable, it's about cure disease, offer hope. And we have consumer health, so non-prescription medications, where we are about to help 1 billion people to live healthier lives. Now, we also have challenges. We have a debt problem. We acquired a big company, Monsanto, from the US, in the crop science business, and since then we are carrying debt. We have litigation that we are fighting with in the US. We have in the pharma business a certain gap in our pipeline, so we're currently launching fantastic products for benefit of patients, but then there's a few years where there's a gap, and we need to address that. So we have also discovered that and felt like in our organization we may be held back by some of the ways that the traditional management system brings along. And our new chief executive, Bill Anderson, when he joined us 15 months ago, helped us identifying and being a bit more ruthless and a bit more honest to ourselves with regard to the case of urgency that we're in for change. And understanding the case of urgency is one thing, and then building the vision of how could it look differently is the second step. And again, here we are making this progress, and we're looking at, we want to change our company into a place where the decisions are made by the operational teams on the ground, by the cross-functional operational teams that do the work, that have the customer interaction, that do the development work on the products, and not focus on internal processes or stuff that is maybe not that we're doing in the traditional management setup with a lot of hierarchy, processes, risk avoidance. We do things that are not value add to patients and customers. So we will build the future completely, really, entirely around the customers and the delivery for patients. Managers who are currently the decision makers, who are the owners of information, they are the power centers of the company, they become coaches to enable the teams to do the work, but they're not making the decisions for the teams. We will have fast cycles for evolution, for learning quickly, failing quickly, learning and taking it on, rather 90 days than yearly or several years plans We'll still have perspectives and vision, of course, for the future and what is the value contribution that we do, but then we need to iterate faster than in the past. We want to, through that, create a speed in a big multinational company. We have 95,000 employees. We want to create the speed of operation like in a startup and yet continue to deliver, complex, to develop products to the world. And the mission of health for all, hunger for none is always at the forefront. And if anything of the activities happens that don't pay into this vision or mission, then we shouldn't be doing it. So how do we get to that vision of the best Bayer that we can think of? There's massive changes that we need, and I want to focus on two areas of these changes. We need the system change, and we need behavior changes. And these go together. You can't separate them out. You can't just do a behavior change thing, then it's a culture project that doesn't lead to anything long term. If you just do the system change, you may still have in the new system also old behavior, so you need to work the two elements. And I'll focus on both of these elements on the next two slides. So first, the system change. And system is a lot. It's processes, it's org structures, it's rules, big rule books, it's a lot, the system piece. I take out here this aspect of the organizational structure. And in a traditional restructure, and we've done plenty of them in Bayer. I've been involved in plenty of them in the past in my leadership roles, varied leadership roles. In the traditional way, you take out certain boxes from this org chart. You may take out a layer occasionally, but often you also build a new layer and whatever. Take out boxes from the old org chart. That's not the kind of restructure we do this time. This time, as I alluded to, we want to have the teams in a ecosystem setup, and we depict them now as circles rather than as boxes reporting somewhere, but they are autonomous, self-organized teams with their mission and their task and the decision authority. And the hierarchy isn't making the decisions anymore. Leadership changes completely their role. We are reducing leadership massively, or management roles we are reducing massively, I should rather say, and we change the content of what they do. So it means a lot of change on the level of everybody in the teams, and it means a lot of change on everybody in management and leadership roles. Now the change is towards the new behaviors. And here we go for the behaviors that we are focusing on. The first one is, what do we focus on? It is the delivery of value to our customers, and in pharma, to our patients. And only on that. And everything else shall fall by the wayside. How we organize as teams and as networks of teams. So sometimes you have teams that work on brands in the market, but you also have topics that go across these brands. And you can introduce again a governance committee, but we don't want to do that. We want to have the network of teams to make the decisions. So not building hierarchy again. So really changing fundamentally, because these decisions were always played up into the hierarchy. And the hierarchy doesn't exist anymore, idealistically, at least in the future. How do we create value? Because we come together with a creative mindset in these teams. We are, let me quickly move on, otherwise I lose too much time. And then we do these 90 days evolutions. We do away with yearly budgets. We do away with budgets altogether. We work beyond budgeting systems in future. We do away with 10-year strategic plans that were developed bottom-up. So we really take out a lot of the slack of the past. And then how do we show up? We come as our best selves to work, as whole human beings, with all these elements and aspects. And it's so important that in a cross-functional team that comes together to drive decisions, make decisions, everybody chimes in, have their say. All thoughts are coming out and not being held back because maybe a boss doesn't like this thought. And then you're suboptimal in your performance. High-performing teams are teams that trust each other and where everybody speaks out. So along with this, and fundamental for these changes is also this, and it's in the 2 lines below these 5 behaviors here, building on a mindset that moves from being reactive to being creative. Reactive mindsets are created by traditional management system regularly because we have the rule books, we have the budgets, we have bosses' expectations, and you react to it. And we push this aside and we say, so what's the value creation opportunity? And here we go for it. And how do we come together to create that and deliver? So the change of mindset is fundamental in this. And then also this change of the leadership. There's a lot of leadership needed, of course, to make this all work, but it's the leadership that makes it work, and not the leadership that makes the decisions. And it's a fundamental change and a huge journey towards that change. So what will we achieve by that? Clearly, world-leading innovation for our patients, our customers. Clearly fulfilled people. I've spent yesterday the day with our Portuguese team in pharma, and they are on a good track on that. And yes, I saw lots of shiny eyes and faces, very positive about the dynamic, the speed that we are working with, the fun it is to come together and work, much less of the old behaviors and frustrations that we have seen. So it works. It's more than promising. And then for investors, it will also be superior financial performance that results out of this. We are in progress of introducing this. We have started this a year ago with having front-runner teams that we gave the space to act in the new ways, even though their environment was still the old ways. And it's been inspirational what they have been able to achieve. It has clear impact on some of our launches. We bring new products to market, both in consumer health as much as in pharma. We have seen that. We have seen customers on the crop science side also say, well, the interaction with you is very different. I get much more out of it, and it's tremendously helpful. We have introduced new organizational structures, or we are introducing, as we speak, new organizational structures across the three businesses. And we are activating teams to get into this mode of the new way of interaction. It's a process that starts by the end of the year everywhere in the company, but it's also a process that will take a couple of years. And it's not a project where we say, we have a starting point here, and there's a Gantt chart, and end of next year it's all done, and tick mark, and then we go on. That's not this thing. This will continue. This will be dynamic over time, dynamic shared ownership, and it will be a fantastic journey of how we build the best Bayer together for the benefit of our customers and patients. Thank you very much.
So, thank you, Lars. And here we have a very large organization in transition. We'll now hear from Doug, a medium-sized organization, and later we'll hear from Andrew with a tiny organization. So this is a phenomenon that's not for one type of organization. It's not for American or European organization. We have both on stage. We're trying to give you a picture of how this is happening on a large scale across many organizations. But tell us about Morningstar.
Happy to. I'll just share one slide and chat like we're around a campfire and share a story, basically. I met the founder of Morningstar in 1982. His name's Chris Rufer. He was a young entrepreneur in Northern California. He had a vision for a high-tech, high-volume food processing company. And I was getting out of college at the time, and I joined his core team as the financial controller. And so we started a company in Northern California. It was quite successful. It got up to about $100 million in sales. We innovated in the tomato processing industry. Reasonably successful company, and yet we had challenges because we just defaulted to the traditional command and control organizational design, which was the typical pyramid structure that you see everywhere in the world. Chris was on top of the pyramid as the managing partner. We had a layer of managers, of which I was one. And we had a production manager, marketing manager, distribution manager, and et cetera. And then we had a layer of supervisors. Under the supervisors, a layer of coordinators, and then we had everyone else at the bottom of the pyramid that did the actual work. Fast forward to 1990, Chris was working on a new project. His new project was called Morningstar. The Morningstar is named for the last sentence in the book Walden Pond by Henry Thoreau, which says, "The sun is but a morning star," which was Chris's vision of perfect results. And so I joined him at Morningstar as the financial controller. And we were working out of a tiny little farmhouse on a dusty canal bank in Northern California, trying to build a factory. We had about 24 members of our core team. I was the only admin type. We had mostly mechanics, electricians, automation specialists, quality specialists, and the like. About 24 of us. One day in March of 1990, Chris walked into the farmhouse and said, "I'd like to call a meeting of colleagues here and talk about how to organize this company." And we said, "Sure, that's great." So we met with him at night in a double-wide construction trailer out on the job site. We sat around in a circle on folding chairs, and Chris handed out a document titled the Morningstar Team Principles. And so the team principles basically boil down to two. The first principle is that human beings should not use force or coercion against other human beings. If you think about that principle, it's the foundation of law everywhere in the world. So every law against assault and battery and theft and burglary and kidnapping and murder and all the rest is predicated on the principle of not using force. And the second principle was people should keep the commitments they make to each other. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. That principle also foundational to law. After all, contract law would be meaningless if parties didn't uphold their obligations to other parties. And so we discussed and debated these principles for a couple of hours, and at the end of the evening, we kind of looked around the circle at each other and said, we don't have any objections to these principles. They're self-evident principles. They make perfect sense. And so we adopted them as pretty much the entire governance of the enterprise. And when we filed out of that trailer at night, we were a self-managed enterprise in that moment. This was February of 1990. We still had a lot of work to do. We had a factory to build. We had thousands of acres, hectares of tomatoes coming up out of the ground for hundreds of miles up and down the state of California. We had to hire hundreds of people to operate the factory and drive the trucks. We had vital equipment on ocean cargo freighters out in the Atlantic Ocean waiting to go through the Panama Canal. And we had hundreds of contractors on the job site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, constructing, fabricating, welding, pulling wire. Finally, on July 16th of 1990, we turned on the factory and we produced 90 million pounds, about 45 million kilograms of industrial tomato concentrate for the world market. And we changed the cost structure of our entire industry pretty much overnight. We did it without a single human boss. No bosses, no managers of others, no vice presidents, no titles, zero command authority, committed teammates and colleagues working together toward a common goal. The company grew. Customers liked the product. We expanded operations up and down the supply chain toward customers in remote warehouses across North America and into Canada. We expanded operations toward the field in terms of trucking and harvesting and farming and deployment of resources. We built another factory and then a third factory. We became the largest tomato processor in the world. $1 billion company with thousands of employees. We don't call them employees, we call them colleagues, professional colleagues. We did it all without a single human boss. No bosses, no managers, no titles, zero command authority. So people became interested in how this can possibly work. It seemed very interesting, and many were skeptical. And so in 2010, Gary Hamel, Professor Hamel, came out for a visit and spent a day with us, walked around our factory, talked to colleagues in the factory, and did a little presentation. Put us on the cover of the Harvard Business Review in December of 2011. We were described as the world's most creatively managed company. So in about 2008, we had started the Morningstar Self-Management Institute. Our mission was to share the ideas, principles, and practices of organizational self-management inside Morningstar and also to others around the world. And we met a number of incredible people, great thinkers, authors, writers, practitioners, business leaders from all around the USA and all around the world. So this is the story of Morningstar, and people ask, well, how can this possibly work? I mean, this just seems fantastic. It seems like it would be impossible. And I can share a few reasons up here and dive more into it in terms of a deep dive later today. But one of the reasons it works is that we believe in managing great complexity with great simplicity. We have two organizing principles: don't use force, keep commitments. We believe these are the two most fundamental principles of human interaction. They are to human beings what gravity is to physics. If you take the principle of not using force, imagine a world where everyone in the world aligned with the principle of not using force. In that world, we wouldn't need armies or navies or police or locks on our doors. And of course, you're thinking, well, that's not reality, that's not realistic, and of course it's not. But that's not really the point. The point is, the closer we approach that ideal state in an organizational context, the more space we open up for human happiness, for teamwork, for high performance, for innovation and creativity and greatness. Imagine a world where everyone always did everything they promised to do. What an amazing world that would be to live in. And keeping commitments has measurable financial and economic value. And of course, that's not reality. We understand that, but again, that's not the point. The point is, the closer we get to that ideal state, the more space we open up for human happiness and harmony, teamwork, prosperity, innovation, creativity, and greatness. So managing great complexity with great simplicity. Secondly, we believe in natural leadership. Leadership is not ordained by power or position or title. Leadership is earned. The mantle of leadership is earned through trust, respect, and communication. Leaders are everywhere in Morningstar. Everyone can become a leader. The power question of leadership is, what kind of leader would you be if no one were required to listen to you? Morningstar gives people the opportunity to answer that question every day. And leadership is earned through trust, respect, and communication. Natural leadership causes leadership muscles to get stronger. If you can just exercise leadership by telling people what to do with the expectation your commands will be obeyed, is that really leadership at all? Natural leadership. Thirdly, we believe in the impeccability of commitment making and commitment keeping. Fernando Flores, a great language expert, computer expert, wrote Understanding Computers and Cognition. Some consider him the author of the Bible on artificial intelligence. He outlined the structure, the language, the life cycle of making and keeping commitments. Commitment making and keeping is impeccable. Commitments are the atomic structure of work. Commitments are how work gets done by and between individual human beings. Commitments replace bureaucracy. So we instantiate organizational self-management by managing great complexity with great simplicity, through natural leadership, and through the impeccability of commitment making and commitment keeping. And that's the story. Thank you.
So thanks, Doug. That's the story in a medium-sized organization. Now we're going to go back to Europe and see how this plays out in a tiny organization with Andrew.
Thank you very much, Doug.
why should you listen to me? I'm a representative of probably the smallest company here. I'm a micro company of 4 people. But we transformed from a company of 26 people to a company of 4 people. And the 4 people do 30% more turnover than the 26. My career is a disaster, really. I managed to shut down many industries. I started in shipbuilding, and Clyde Shipbuilding declined to almost nothing. Then went to pumps. That site's now closed, and business moved to India. I then ended up in cables down in the southeast. That's now a housing estate. I then ended up in generators. Well, that's now a cafe. And eventually, I kind of got the problem in my head and decided I was going to do something about it. All the businesses we had looked like that. They were all heterarchies. They said they were hierarchies. They weren't. They were all fighting between each other as those kings and princes. And more time was spent inside, people trying to climb the ladder, than outside servicing customers. They all had a common disease: chronically low productivity, low customer satisfaction, and losses and bailouts. All of them died because of that. The organizational rule set was basically one developed many, many years ago, way back in the years of Adam Smith, who was in Glasgow in about 1750. And that basically is the organizational rule set that has stayed till today. And these companies in the year 2000 operated under. Unbelievable. That's not the organizational rule set that's going to carry us through into the future. So anyway, being a brave man, I sold my house, took the money out of my house, stuck it into the business because I was going to turn it around. The business was a complex business. It was highly regulated. It was in the aerospace business. We were on lots of platforms that you'll probably know about: Airbus A320, F-35s, you name it. We were a very small player. We were on F-15s, etc. Small player, but we were on most platforms. It was shaped exactly, despite it being a small business, was exactly the same as the other ones, and had exactly the same disease. When I came in, said, right, we've got to monitor stuff. So I stuck in, early on, some monitors. I don't expect you to read that now, but you can read it later in the slide pack. But that was key to our success. We measured things from the very start. So before we did any changes, we measured the impact. And then we started treating the symptoms of our disease. So we stuck in lean and we stuck in agile. Lean was in the manufacturing area, agile in the design area. And we did that cycle. And it worked. It was brilliant. It really made a difference. But the symptoms returned when the programs were removed. And that was a disaster for us. Because we kept reapplying the treatments. It cost a fortune. £250,000 we spent. For a small business, it's a lot of money, and it was my money. It came from my house. And it's different if it's your house than some corporate entity where it's shareholders and funds and grand things. So the symptoms kept returning, and it was now critical, because I was looking at a caravan. And when you're looking at a caravan, life changes. You suddenly get a moment of epiphany. I have a business partner called Julian Wilson, and we had a meeting, I remember, at his house, and the meeting was quite simple. Where are we going to continue to blow our balance sheet, or where are we going to do something radically different? It was a long meeting, and to be honest, it was 50-50. Well, that's rubbish. It was 51-49, but still. The decision was made that we were going to carry on. I went on holiday, because I was burnt out by then, to the Isle of Wight with my family. We went to this little place, this village, which had a village within a village in it. So I woke up in the morning with a thought, well, how about we go for a company within a company? So instead of doing the lean cells, we took our lean cells and we said, no, we're going to make them virtual companies. So what we did is we broke every rule. Okay, so basically, we wanted to accommodate change. We wanted to formalize all internal agreements. Doug talked about commitments, but we formalized that with money. We devolved control and integrate skills. So we aligned our context, which meant breaking up the organization. We introduced internal contracts with real money. So if you wanted to buy a product or service from somebody else, you bought it, but it was charged to your area, your cell. We devolved control, so each person became a virtual business, in effect. So each person had their own virtual company. And then we created these boards, yeah, and we integrated every single business process the organization did to every single person. Now you think that's impossible. I can tell you it's not, because we did it. These are the 4 guys that do it. Okay, so these 4 guys do more work, about 30 to 40% more work than the 26 people we had before. So the statutory company now earns money, so you can imagine the statutory company as the management team, was the old management team. That earns money by charging the virtual companies for the services like banking, because we provide them money, landlord, because we provide them a whole lot, or we provide them the workspace they exist within, and things like organizational models. I call it the pond they exist within, because we don't tell them what to do, but we create the boundaries that they exist within. So we did cure the disease. I didn't live in a caravan. We got to high productivity. In fact, we increased by far greater than 500%. We got to great customer satisfaction, because it mattered to the individuals in the cell. And now we're looking at profit and bail-ins. The employees want to bail into the company, not bail out. What was our secret? Well, basically, every single person adds value. The investors, which is me and my business partner now, we don't work in the organization, but we put our capital at risk in the value add. And then there's just the people add the value. There's nobody else. If you don't add value, yeah, you're not there. We then put it into, we kind of codified our whole system. I designed a completely new ERP system for one person. That was a nice challenge. And we then implemented that within each of our virtual companies. So the 5 lessons that we learned was, 1, a rule set must be whole and complete. And if it's not whole and complete, you have responsibility leaks. Yeah? The rule set must reward being smart, yeah, and not working hard. So it doesn't matter if you work 1 day a week. If you work 1 day a week, yeah, and you add lots of value, you're going to go home with a lot of money. Because what you generate, you get paid. So we operate a system not based on time, but based on value. So every single person in our organization has a monthly P&L and account and balance sheet. I'll jump one. Sorry about that. Anyway, we found a cure to our malaise. And my life's improved phenomenally. So I don't go to work. I have a nice lifestyle. I do what I want to do. This is all part of it. And the people adding value in the organization also have a vastly improved life. So thank you very much for listening to my story. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. And we saw these principles playing out in a tiny organization of now, what, 5 people? 5. Tiny. We're actually now going to have a quick look at a large organization and a look back, because it gives us a chance to see what happens if you pursue these ideas over a longer period of time. And Eric Schmidt is not here today, but he is with us via a video, and tell us what it's about. And the story begins in 2008, when the world's most famous scholars had gathered in Silicon Valley that had the goal that is very similar to this conference. The goal was to reinvent management for the 21st century, essentially the same goal as this conference, and we'll see what happened. They actually met with Eric Schmidt, who was the CEO of Google at the time. At that point, it was still quite a small company, and they wanted to know how Google was organizing itself to organize the world's information and make it universally useful, a monumental, humongous goal. And here are some excerpts of the conversation that Eric Schmidt had with those scholars back in 2008.
So it's much simpler than it appears. Is that the model of governance has gone from hierarchical to more sort of empowered. The problem is that a whole generation of managers don't actually want to empower anybody. The culture then defines the outcome, and the culture is one around innovation. And so the culture can be understood as a ship and iterate culture with transparency for what people are doing. And that model scales pretty well. It's amazing how many smart young people there are who just want to keep doing stuff. And we have a hiring process that really does bring in people who really, self-select into that group. So it leads to lots of chaos, but every once in a while it produces these amazing, just amazing achievements. The people are the same regardless of generation, language, race, culture, what have you. They want the same things. I suspect if you go to a quote, boring old company, they also want to be empowered. The culture doesn't allow them to do it. There's a strong shared vision, and that strong shared vision is really about innovation in the web, and that's celebrated, and that I think helps a lot. Very difficult to describe it, but when you're in it, you know exactly what it is.
And so what he was saying was running Google is much simpler than it appears. We've gone from a hierarchy to empowerment. We have a culture that defines the outcome, and we have fun at work. We recruit people who want to have fun, and we celebrate a common shared vision, and stuff happens. And the reaction of these famous scholars is really quite informative and remarkable, because the reaction was not that this is wonderful, but this is preposterous. This can't be true. You cannot run an organization like this, and if it's being run like that, it will never last. It will disappear quite quickly, and worse than that, this is dangerous. Dangerous. This will lead to chaos in other organizations, and if we make any reference to this, it will spread, and chaos will run throughout the whole world. Let's keep it quiet. Let's not tell anything about these crazy ideas that are happening out here in Silicon Valley. So their report, which you can go and see, they did not mention Google. They did not mention this way of organizing, even though their goal of these scholars was to reinvent management. Here was someone in their face telling them, this is working, it's making money. And of course, it's turned out to be making monumental amounts of money, 20 times increase in the value of the firm over those 16 years. And it creates a great place to work. People like having fun at work. What a surprise that is. So this is something that's actually happening. And what's going on here is that the business school professors had a very clear idea of what management is, and it's making profits through processes and control and hierarchy and outputs. And in the 20th century, that worked pretty well and was profitable, but things have changed. And when the business school professors were faced with a firm not doing those things, they simply couldn't see it. They were seeing management as working within these assumptions, and so in their eyes, Google had zero management, no management at all, and so was simply ignored. And this is a phenomenon that's happening. That it comes back to a saying by Marcel Proust that the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeing new landscape, but in having new eyes. These professors had to have new eyes to see this thing that is staring them in the face. Another example, very quickly, the story of Microsoft, which many of you probably know, but these key points that the business of Microsoft was really going rather badly in 2014. For 14 years, the prior CEO, Steve Ballmer, the firm wasn't making any money. There was low morale in the organization, and they were implementing the standard management. This is the management we need to move from. That was the management which was Microsoft in 2014. And let's hear what Satya Nadella, who was not named as the CEO, to take over this losing dead company and to see what actually happened, how he approached that challenge.
I would say first thing I want to do and focus on is ruthlessly remove any obstacles that allow us to innovate, every individual in an organization to innovate, and then focus all of that innovation on things that Microsoft can uniquely do. We are the company that enables people to do more, to play, get more, have more fun, to create more. So in some sense, we refer to ourselves as the do more company, and I want us to be able to take that focus and innovation forward. And lastly, I want every one of us to find more meaning at work. We spend far too much time at work for it not to have deep meaning. Going forward, it's a mobile-first, cloud-first world. In other words, everything is becoming digital and software-driven. And so I think of the opportunities being unbounded, and we need to be able to pick the unique contribution that we want to bring.
And so what Satya is saying, ruthlessly remove obstacles, allow every individual in the firm to innovate, focus on innovation on things that Microsoft uniquely can do, not what everyone is doing, but what we can make a particular contribution, and be the company that enables everyone to do more and enable everyone to find more meaning and fun at work, very similar to the 4 other stories that you've heard. And of course, what was the reaction of the pundits? Exactly the same as the reaction to the other 4 stories. This will not work. Even in 2016, 2 years after this transition was well underway, here's Geoffrey Moore, a famous writer, Microsoft is dead in the water. Run out of steam, talent is frozen, legacy systems, forget about Microsoft, it's all over. But of course, it was not to be. The value of the firm increased tenfold and now is one of the $3 trillion companies. And what's happening is that this 20th century way of running companies on the left, making profits, processes, control, hierarchy, outputs, is being replaced by creating value, focus on customers, empowerment, collaborative networks, process-enabled outcomes. Those themes have been present in all of the 5 stories. And this, in a sense, is a summary of our session. This is the shift that is taking place in companies that are making this happen, not in their imagination, but actually they are getting the kinds of returns, getting the kinds of motivated staff that we have. So if you want a summary of this session, take this slide. This is what the transition to next management, the new way of running organization, is about. And as we're running out of way over schedule, according to this, I've been out of time for some minutes ago, so I'll end on this note that this is what this session is about. We will be covering these issues in the lightning talks. We'll be exploring them in the master class on Saturday morning. So this is not the end of the story, but we've given you the headlines of what you need to be heading towards. This is the agenda for the 21st century. Thank you very much.